Good morning from the UK. Yes. I'm back. This has been happening a lot. It happened last night. I'm Gloria. This is Inception Live, and I'd like to welcome my wonderful guest, Bill Bennett. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gloria. It's wonderful to have me here. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. So there's a lot to go into, and obviously, as I've said, my favourite topic is intuition. However, Bill, for anyone in my audience here in the UK who's not aware of the amazing work you've done, your documentaries, and the books that you've written, I have put all the links up on the page. Could you give us a bio, a description of who and what you've been about and up to now?
Okay. I'll keep it very brief. I'm a feature filmmaker. I've made 16 movies. I've made some movies in Hollywood. Most of my movies have been Australian movies, though. Recently, I've been doing a couple of feature-length documentaries. I'm just completing one on fear called Facing Fear. And the one I did before that was on intuition called PGS, Intuition is Your Personal Guidance System. I'm also an author. Penguin Random House recently published a trilogy of YA novels that I wrote called the Palace of Fires series. I've got another book coming out through a New York publisher next year called The Golden Bridge. I keep busy.
You do keep busy, and you're very, very, I must say, creative. I mean, as much as I do want to go to intuition, you just reminded me, fear. Your documentary on fear and your perception and your take on it. Could we start the show is how do you perceive fear in that way? I mean, many people say there's two types of fear. Okay, there's a natural fear, like obviously if a big lion jumped through the door, yeah, that's an innate natural fear. Run for your life. You're going to be eaten. But there's what I call illusionary fears and illusionary fears. So could you expand a bit on the documentary you made regarding fear?
Sure, Gloria. Basically, while I was making the film on intuition, I came to realize that fear is the biggest inhibitor of intuition. And then I started to wonder, well, what is fear? We think we know fear. I thought I knew what fear was, just in the way that I thought I knew what intuition was. But when you really start to dig down, I didn't really know what fear actually was, how it worked, why it worked. Do we need it? Do we not need it? Is love an antidote to fear? What other social ills does fear, is fear the trigger of? There's a whole bunch of questions that really came to mind. And so what I do now at this point in my life is if I have something that I'm curious about, I go out and make a film about it. And so what I did is I traveled all around the world. I interviewed 24 of the world's top experts on fear. And I've come back now and it's in the last stages of post-production. It should be ready for release in January of next year.
Okay. Do you have a conclusion of any of the questions you asked? Or did you find an answer that resonated with you on these questions?
Oh, that's a very good question. Yes, I did. It took me quite a long time to realize, and I came to this conclusion that fear is a construct of time and a function of loss. So let me explain that. Fear is a construct of time. Fear exists in the past. I say in the film in the past, in the form of regret, and in the future in the form of doubt. It is without the element of time attached to fear. Fear does not exist. I also came to understand that all, and I've yet to really find somebody to refute this. Fear at its basis level is rooted in some form of loss. I have challenged various people around the world to give me a fear that isn't at its heart based in loss.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can detach ourselves from time and detach ourselves for the need to hold on to things, then fear cannot exist. The very basic thing as well, I thought, Gloria, when I was doing this, is that if you're a good person,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the fears go away.
Mm-hmm.
And what made me think about this was all these stories you hear on the news about DNA evidence that comes to light, and suddenly somebody who did a crime 20, 30 years ago is arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I started to think, for that 20 or 30 years, that person must have been in fear all that time.
Mm-hmm.
Fear that at
Yeah.
some point the phone was going to ring, there's going to be a knock on the door, there's going to be a police car pull up outside. And I thought, well, that's because that person did something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take that out of the equation, then a lot of the fears go away. If you pay your taxes on time, if you pay your bills on time, if you,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're basically as good a person as you possibly can be to other people.
I agree. I mean, that resonates with me. At this moment, my truth is there's just two emotions one can express and interact with and experience: fear or love. And to me, that means what it's for me. My interpretation is fear is only the lack of love, the experience of
Well,
love.
in fact,
How does that resonate?
we examine this in the film. The
Mm,
film is broken up into 10 chapters, and one of the chapters is fear versus love. And
mm,
interestingly, Dr. Joe Dispenza, I put that question to Dr. Joe, and if people don't know, Dr. Joe Dispenza is a world-renowned neuroscientist and
yeah.
speaker. He's written several best-selling books, and
Quite
whenever he
motivational. I've watched a lot of his work. It's very motivational. Yes.
and I put that to him. I said, they say there are two states of being. There's fear and there's love, and he resolutely refuted it. And I won't go into the full details because
No.
people can watch the film and see what he says. But basically, the conclusion the film comes to is that there's not fear or love. There is fear and love,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to understand one to understand the other,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's really no separation between the two.
Mm.
You have to have fear and you have to have love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can resonate with that as well because, the way that I perceive it, it's deep thinking for me, is when there is only love. I know that sounds very, new ager, but for me, there is only love. And being as old as I am and the experiences I've experienced, and some past experience was like horrifically traumatic. And that's why I went into psychology. Why do people do what they do? And for me, there's the lack of love. But however, I can still relate to what Joe says, because that's another good perception as well. For me, it doesn't matter which way we articulate the statement, but it's the recognition of these two major energies. And you went into, earlier on, you said like the guy that committed a murder after 30 years, yeah, he would have been living in a fear base where he did wrong. It resonates too, because we've all been, when we've done wrong, when we're kids, we've all done it. Everyone's experienced doing something that's illegal. And you do actually live that part of your life in a traumatic, fear-based response. And then you fear the future, like you said, because, oh, I can't go there because the police may be there, or someone, do you see what I'm saying? So I can resonate with what he says. I found, and I want to ask you this on fear, I found many of the fears I had obtained through my experience here, at some point light bulbs went on, and I thought, that was an illusion. There was nothing to fear. How does that, have you come across that as well?
In 2013, I walked the Camino de Santiago, the 500-mile pilgrimage across Spain.
Oh, wow. How well done. I mean, I would have loved to have done that. I'm an avid reader, The Alchemist and all of that. Yeah. Oh, I would have loved to have done that. So,
One of the biggest fears that pilgrims face when they walk the Camino is that they're not going to get a bed to sleep in
yeah,
at the end of the night.
yeah,
And so what that means is that kind of dictates their day.
yes,
They leave before dawn. They rush through breakfast. They rush through the day.
yeah,
It becomes almost like a race to get to the town where they're going to, because there's only a limited number of beds, and there are more pilgrims than there are beds.
yeah,
And so it kind of, for me, I started to realize that it was sort of corrupting the whole notion of why you would walk a pilgrimage.
yes,
That is to, if anything, get yourself into a very thoughtful, contemplative, meditative state. But these people were in fear.
yes.
I got caught up in it as well.
Yeah,
And
go on.
and then I started, and then I had an epiphany. I thought, I was actually on the Meseta, which is a 200-kilometer stretch of basically almost flat plain
Mm-hmm.
in the center of Spain, between Burgos and Leon. And there are very few towns, and if you get to a town and there's no accommodation, then you're facing a 20-30 kilometer walk, and at the end of the day, that's a long haul.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found myself caught up in fear in the same way that other people were, wondering about a bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had this epiphany, Gloria, and that epiphany was this. I asked myself, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen, I came to realize, was that, okay, I'd get to the village, all the beds would be taken, I'd be too tired to walk to the next village, and so I would have to find some other place to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on that particular day, it was a sunny day, there were no clouds, it wasn't going to rain. I thought, I've got a sleeping bag, I've got something I can pull over myself. I could put my sleeping bag in a paddock under a tree with a bit of grass,
Yeah.
and I could sleep under the tree.
Yeah.
Or I could go into the vestibule of a church and sleep
Yeah.
there, or find a porch somewhere. And so when I started to think, well, that's the worst that can happen, then I realized that wasn't so bad. I could handle that.
Yeah.
And it came as a big kind of awakening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I walked, I thought, maybe I can apply this to other parts of my life when I get back home. All the various fears that I have.
Yeah.
Am I going to run out of money? Is my wife going to leave me?
Yeah.
Am I going to die prematurely?
Yeah.
All of these kind of
Yeah.
really crazy, irrational fears that we have. I thought, would it work if I applied that same mantra to those fears that I had? And I did it. I was pretty bored. I was walking a long way,
Yeah.
and I thought, okay, what's the worst that can happen if I run out of money?
Yeah.
And I dug right back down to the, you've got to be ruthlessly honest with yourself when you do this. And you get right to the very core fear that you have, and you look at it barefaced, look right in the eye, and you go, that's actually not so bad. I know a way that I can deal with that.
Yeah.
And so when I came back from the Camino, that was one of the biggest things that I learned really from the pilgrimage, was applying this notion of what is the worst that can happen to your fears.
Yes.
And I still do that now.
Yeah. I do it. I do it from way back. I mean, being a youngster, I was very fearful due to the life experience I was going through. And then I got to the point, I'd say, okay, this is a situation. what is the worst case scenario of every situation. And I found that's where I said I found it was, to me, illusionary fear. Because by the time I deconstructed this, what I perceived to be a fear, I found it wasn't fearful at all. I wouldn't like it to happen, but you know what? It's okay. I love that. I agree with that. However, not that I agree, I resonate with that. But one thing I want to come back on is what you said, like about the pilgrimage. And I've always thought any pilgrimage, any journey is not about the destination, it's the journey. And that's what I got from the book, The Alchemist. Yeah. And I find it beautiful that you've been aware of these others panicking, I need to get from A to B, there won't be a bed. You got yourself, you naturally programmed to go into the panic. But at some point, and this is where the benefit of the actual journey outweighs the destination, you had this epiphany, and boom, and it changes your life. So I think it's a beautiful experience for anyone listening. You should try what Bill's saying. I've done it, and I still do it to this day. When a new experience comes up, and okay, what's the worst that could happen? I think it's wonderful. I mean,
Gloria, Paul Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, he walked the Camino.
Yes.
And he wrote a book called The Pilgrimage.
Yes.
And his second book was The Alchemist. And he said that he could not have written The Alchemist had he not walked the Camino.
Yeah. I mean, The Alchemist was, oh God, what year was that? Was that out? I feel old.
I don't know. I think it's about 25 years old now. So
yes, it is. And I remember I was doing things, and everywhere it was like this kept coming up. This book, The Alchemist, it just come out. And for me, it's always been, if something's too synchronistic, I got to go and check it out. And it kept coming up, or someone was talking and they mentioned The Alchemist again. And I checked it out and I said, right, okay, Amazon, here I come, because it was too much synchronicity. And I picked up the book. I never put it down. It was life-changing. It explained my experience up to then. I was light bulbs, awake, whatever. And I tell you, I won't go into too much detail. Not only did I'd start meeting people and they go, have you read The Alchemist? I go, yeah. And then I started to connect to others. I tell you, one of my children, bless her, at the time I read it and I said, you must read this. You must read it. I'm going to change your life. And she said, okay, mother. She ordered it. She never read it until 10 years later. Then when she did read it, boom, her whole life changed. So it just goes to show, at the right time, at the right place, it's going to happen. But yes, I've read The Pilgrimage. I watched his video as well. He did like a video thing. But The Alchemist was the one for me. There isn't a greater, for me, book than The Alchemist. It's just, it always will be. Because I think also within that, you've got the fear is in there as well. The fears, and fearing the future, fearing about money, fearing about, the gold coins. So everything's in there as well. I've got to ask you though, if you were to, if you could give a practice to anyone in the audience, because the whole point of my shows is if we can share anything that resonates and people can start working on it. And we both know that fear is an awful thing to carry with you. What would the practice be? Would it be like you suggested earlier? How bad can it get? Or is there another practice and then we can move on to intuition?
One of the people that I interviewed was a fellow called Dr. Richard Schwartz. Dr. Richard Schwartz is a clinical psychologist. He is a professor at Harvard Medical School in America.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the creator of a therapy modality called the internal family systems. Now, the way Richard deals with fear is he finds the fear in his body,
mm-hmm.
and then he engages the fear in conversation. and
Oh,
he personalizes the fear.
yeah,
So he gets to know the fear,
yeah,
and just like he calls these fears his scared parts.
yeah,
Basically, his internal family systems operates on the basis that our mind consists of various parts,
yeah,
and there are parts that um, deal with fear,
yeah.
different types of fear, and so forth. And so what he does is he isolates that particular fear, and he personalizes it, and he
Mm-hmm,
has conversations with it,
mm-hmm.
and he tries to find out what the fear is trying to teach him.
Yes, yes.
And the fear invariably, and in this process of befriending the fear, and in
Mm-hmm.
fact giving the fear love, he says,
Yes, yes.
what happens is the fear loses its potency.
Absolutely.
It loses its hold on him, and that, I
Yeah.
think, is a really quite a wonderful way of looking at fear.
I think it's beautiful. I do something similar because I come from a process of self realization. So, and in that teaching and that practice is the energy of fear comes up out of nowhere. Okay. We all say we've done the work, you know, and you feel it. And I put my attention on, I see it like a child, you know, part of me. And I go, okay. And what that does for me is I realize I've got a sensation of fear, but before my mind kicks in, I look around my environment and there's nothing to fear. So I then go, okay, there's no dangers around me because we will go into intuition. So I do the sort of like 360, you know, is a house on fire, is there an intruder, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, well, and it's really strong. And I go, okay, you can stay there. And I do the same process. I put my love on it, my light on it, and I then I get the understanding it's maybe a trauma, it's an energy that I responded to so many times in because there was many external threats when I was a child, and I do a very similar thing like that as well. But I do check my environment because of the intuition, because the intuition will kick in if there is really a lion just about to jump through the back door. It will kick in for you. So that's a good practice, guys. But I also like your practice as well. And I would suggest that if it resonates with anyone, you know, when a fear comes towards you, say, and I've done it, what is the worst thing that could happen? And I think that's another good practice. And this time in, you know, what we're going through, I think these two pointers may assist many of you out there in your personal lives. So let's now go into intuition. Talk to
Mhm.
me about your film Intuition and what it entails.
Well, like I said, I'm a movie director. I was in New Orleans doing a thriller with Burt Reynolds,
Mm-hmm.
quite a big budget movie. I was producing and directing. I had to go back to Los Angeles, so I was driving. I was driving to the New Orleans airport early one morning before dawn to get the first flight out. As I approached an intersection, there was a green light up ahead. I went to accelerate because I was running late. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to get stuck on a red light. I went to accelerate, and as I did that, a voice kicked in, and said, "Slow down."
Mm.
There was no Number one. There was no traffic on the road. The roads
Yeah,
were totally empty at that time in the morning, and it was just so weird. I'd never heard a voice before,
yeah,
and I ignored it. I went to put my foot on the accelerator pedal again. The voice said a second time, more emphatically, "Slow down." I thought, this is just too weird. I'm going to slow down. So I slowed down as I entered the intersection. And then a huge red truck ran the red light on the cross street to my right. It thundered through the intersection. I then slammed my foot on the brakes. It it missed me by inches, but had I
yeah,
not slowed down,
yes,
that truck would have killed me. Had I not
yes,
listened to that voice, had I not acted on it,
yeah,
that truck would have killed me.
yeah,
I got to the other side of the intersection and I had to pull over. I was shaking with adrenaline.
yeah,
And three thoughts came to me. What was that voice? Where did it come from? And why did it save my life?
yeah,
And that became the basis then of an 8-year odyssey around the world to find out what that voice was.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to answer those three questions. What was that voice? Where did it come from? And why did it save my life?
Mm-hmm.
I started to research intuition, and I came to realize that what happened to me was actually a very common occurrence, that it happens all too frequently. We don't hear about it very often because most people are too embarrassed or too afraid to talk about it because
Yeah.
they'll be ridiculed. They
Yeah.
feel that they'll be ridiculed.
Mm-hmm.
I went to make a film about it, and in the process, I've got to say, Gloria, I started off a cynic.
Mm.
You know, I went to med school for 2 years, but then I switched across to journalism. I trained at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which is like the Australia's equivalent of the BBC, except we don't have the toffee accents.
Yeah.
And
We don't get. They do have toffee accents. I don't, but they do. So do go on.
so I approached it. With the attention to detail and the
Yeah.
level of cynicism
Mm.
that I had developed as a journalist in my training as a journalist. But I was prepared to keep an open mind. And the one thing that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to make like a BBC knowledge documentary or something like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure how I would make the film when I started out,
Mm-hmm.
but all I knew is that I wanted to have absolute total creative control over it. I didn't want anyone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to take my time. It ended up taking 8 years. We had 3 years filming and 2 years editing.
Mm-hmm.
And during the process, I did a fundamental shift in thinking
Mm-hmm.
personally. It totally changed my life making that film.
Yeah.
And I came to understand that there is a huge amount of confusion out there as to what intuition actually is. I tried to find a definition for intuition that actually was pertain to what happened to me. I couldn't find a definition of intuition that properly expressed what happened to me.
Yeah.
And so it took me quite literally several years to come up with my own definition. And that definition I finally settled on was this: intuition is a sudden, unexplained insight that comes unaided by logic, intellect, or expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition is a sudden, unexplained insight that comes unaided by logic, intellect, or expertise.
Mm-hmm.
What I also realized was that people mistakenly use intuition and instinct interchangeably. They use the words interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he did that instinctively,
Mm-hmm.
when they're saying he did that intuitively.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thought.
Words are totally different. They're fundamentally different. The other thing I realized is that that the confusion that I had in trying to find a definition of intuition was because I'd never read this, but I came to the conclusion that there are actually 4 types of intuition.
Okay.
There's not one type of intuition. There's 4 types of intuition.
Okay.
You talked before about survival intuition.
Yeah.
Survival intuition is what I call the primary. It's the first level of intuition, because the number one job of intuition is to keep us alive.
Yes.
So survival intuition is a heightened sensory perception.
Mm-hmm.
It's like mother's intuition protecting her child. It's the intuition that you feel when you're in a bad place that you shouldn't be, and yet there's no logic to it, but you want to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
So that's survival intuition. Second type of intuition is what I call cognitive intuition, which is based on expert knowledge. So it's when a CEO has a gut decision, makes a gut decision. He says, I made that intuitively.
Yeah.
What he's doing is he's using what I call subsumed memory recall, where he pulls from his archives, his internal archives, knowledge and skill that he's accrued over a long period of time, so that he can come to an instantaneous, what he calls a gut decision. It's an intuitive decision, but it's a cognitive decision based on his or her expert knowledge of that particular field. You see sportsmen, sportswomen. They talk about being in the zone and doing something intuitively. Ayrton Senna very famously talks about winning the Monaco Grand Prix and him not actually driving the car, that he wasn't in control of the car.
Yeah.
That is cognitive intuition based on expert knowledge. So that's number 2. Number 3 is what I call mystical intuition, which is what happened to me in the car. Mystical intuition cannot be explained. It's inexplicable. It's a voice that says slow down. It's coincidence, synchronicity. It's numerology. It's these things that are inexplicable, and yet it is an intuitive. It's an intuitive calling.
Yeah.
Urging you to do something. The 4th type and the last type of intuition is what I call proxy intuition, which is intuition that happens through someone else. An example of that is you're about to get on a plane. A friend calls up and says, Bill, don't get on the plane. I don't know why I'm making this call. I don't know why I'm saying this to you, but I've got a bad feeling. Do not get on that plane. You heed it. You don't get on the plane crashes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a type of intuition that comes through somebody else. Sometimes it can simply be a hand on a shoulder. You're about to step off the road, and a stranger just puts the hand on your shoulder and stops you from walking out, and then a car, boom, goes past. Had you stepped off, you would have been killed by that car. And you look around, the stranger's not there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard dozens of these stories, Gloria, dozens of these stories, and they're real. You know, these people come up to me at Q&A screenings after I've screened the film. They tell me their story. They have no reason to lie to me. They have no reason to tell me.
I know. I mean, they are real. I mean, you know, the 4 areas of intuition. I have no issue. I totally resonate with all of it. I mean, maybe, I mean, I'm what you call like a psychic medium. So there you go. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I've used them. The shared intuition, I've told someone not to, it was actually a plane, not to go on a flight to America, because I knew a volcano was going to erupt, and the smoke would ground the flights and she'd be stuck. And she said, okay, mother. And the volcano went off in I think it was Norway or somewhere like that, and we were all, air traffic was, so I mean, and there's been lots of others. So it's all real, and definitely about, you're just about to do something and a stranger intervenes and the next minute they're not there. That is common. It is real. It does happen. I mean, but Bill, I want to go back to your experience, the mystical intuition. And I've got to ask this question as the host. I've got to, for the audience. You heard an external voice. Have you come to any, conclusion or idea of who was that talking to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It took me a while. I traveled all around the world. I spoke to holy men on the Ganges. I went up into the Dalai Lama temple. I spoke to neuroscientists in North America. I talked to psychics, mystics. I went to Bhutan and spoke to the Prince of Bhutan's spiritual leader there. And the conclusion that I've come to is this, and that is that the voice that I heard was a higher aspect of me, warning me to be careful because it was not my time to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that higher aspect of me, some people might call it my higher self. Some people might call it my guardian angel.
Yeah.
Some people might call it the voice of God. Some people might call it the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
The Buddhists call it, the Buddhists actually have a word for it up in the Dalai Lama complex. They call it a karmic imprint of me from a past life. There are various terms that you can apply to it, but basically it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a higher aspect of me that wants to protect me. And like I say, the first job of intuition is to keep you alive. The second job of intuition is to keep you on your path.
Yeah.
And this is why I called the film and why I call intuition a personal guidance system.
Yeah.
Because it's like a GPS. It is a guidance system that
Mm.
strives to keep you on your path, your purpose through life.
Yeah.
And most people ignore it.
Oh God.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
they ignore it, and they wonder why when they get older, they have health problems,
Yeah.
they have relationship breakdowns, they're unhappy, they're depressed, they go on medication.
Mm-hmm.
And because throughout their life they have refused to acknowledge their intuitive impulses, they've ended up doing things, making decisions, being in relationships, being in jobs, doing
Mm.
stuff that goes against their core spiritual values, which are represented by their intuition.
I'm resonating with that. I mean, you know, we all have names for this. I say my higher self or a fractal of me. In fact, it's me in a higher frequency version, because I'm a spiritual being using labels, having a human experience. And I think if more people did looked at this deeper, um, it invites you to, introspection. It did to me way back. Is, well, if I'm a spiritual being having a human experience and I'm getting this mystical intuition to, it's not time to go yet. Don't go left, go right. But I'm aware it's me somehow. Then what does it say about my identity? That who is the one having this human experience? And are you understanding where I'm going with this? Because you call it the higher you, the higher self, or the God part of it. It really doesn't matter what you call it. I agree. But that got me into going down the road of, well, because I've had that. I've had it in childhood. I had more than a sixth sense. I must have had like a 20th sense because I was in 24/7 in survival mode to physically survive what I was going through. So mine was so heightened. I was, the voices were there. Do this, don't do that, go there. It was just constant as a child. So, but that later on in life, not all the time, but later on in life, I said, well, if that's my higher self, or there's another part of me, who is that? And they seem to be in control of this experience. Do you understand where I'm coming from with that, Bill? Does that resonate with you in any way with your experience? Did that what I'm trying to go is that experience you had with the voice and all the research in the documentary, to what effect did it affect your consciousness, your expansion, your knowledge, your light bulbs going off? That's where I'm trying to take this aspect.
Well, as I said before, it fundamentally changed me as a person. I went into making the film one thing. I kept an open mind. I came out the other side
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
And a number of things happened that that caused that. I certainly met some extraordinary people, and I saw some extraordinary things that were inexplicable. But things happened to me. And to give you an example, I'd walked another Camino. I'd walked the Portuguese Camino. I'd come from that with a very bad cough.
Mm-hmm.
The cough lasted about 12 months. I went to various doctors, and I don't normally take medicines or antibiotics, but I went on a course of antibiotics. This cough would not clear, and it became chronic.
Mm-hmm.
I could not have a conversation with you now for any
Yeah.
length of time without having to turn around and with a handkerchief cough into the handkerchief. It was really, really bad. Anyway, so I was in Mount Shasta, which is a very sacred place in far north of California.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to interview a psychic healer, a man named Michael Tamura. Anyway, I had in my travels in Italy, I'd picked up some herbal medication which suppressed the cough.
Yeah.
So it would give me about 3 hours where I wouldn't cough, but it didn't cure it.
No.
It just stopped me from coughing. Anyway, I was due to interview this fellow Michael Tamura, but the night before I woke up at about 1:00 in the morning with a coughing fit.
Yeah.
And I put my sheet over my mouth, and when I woke up in the morning, I saw the sheet was splattered with blood.
Mm-hmm.
I was coughing up blood.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I took one of these tablets before I met Michael the following morning to do the interview.
Mm-hmm.
He took one look at me and he said, you need a healing. And I said, oh yeah. I said, tell me more. And he said, you've got some sort of bronchial issue.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, tell me more. He said, look, if you want to, I'll give you a quick reading. I'll see if I can heal you. Do you want to do that? So, I gave instructions to the crew to set up and
Mm-hmm.
so forth, how to, all of that stuff. And so I sat down with Michael, and Michael sat about quite a distance away from me, about 10, 12 feet away from me. And he went into this zone where his eyes started to flutter, and he was really out to it. He was someplace else, and he started clutching the air in my direction and feeling my energies. And then his eyes kind of sprung open,
Mm-hmm.
and then he described not in generalities, in specific detail, a woman that I had a relationship with probably about 5 years before I got married.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very intense relationship, and it ended acrimoniously. And he described this woman as though he was seeing her standing right beside me.
Mm-hmm.
There was no doubt that he was describing this
Yeah.
woman. It was that specific. And then he said that she has her hands around your throat and she's been choking you because she's still angry with you. And do you want me to release her? And I said, bloody oath. Yes, please, get her off me.
You think?
So he then did this with his hands and, all sort of stuff like that, and pulled this and pulled that and whatever. And then he went back into his zone again, eyes fluttering and whatever. He went back into his zone. Then his eyes flicked open again. And then he said, you were a political activist during medieval times, and you attacked the church. Your main focus of attack was the church.
Mm-hmm.
You would get out and decry the church, and so what the church folks did in the small village is they caught you and they tied you to stocks in the middle of the town square, and they slit your throat,
Mm-hmm.
and you were on this sort of stand for all the villagers to see that you shouldn't speak out against the church.
Yeah.
And you were dying very slowly because they'd slit your throat like this and blood was coming out of your throat.
Yeah.
And then he said, do you want me to heal that? And I said, yeah, okay, do that, please.
Go for it.
So he did this and this and this and this and this and so forth. Anyway, so we finished up and I did the interview. And then it wasn't probably until about 4 or 5 o'clock that afternoon. This was like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the cameraman turned to me and said, you haven't coughed. And I said, what do you mean I haven't coughed? He said, well, that pill would have worn off by about midday, but it's now 5 o'clock and you haven't coughed. You haven't coughed at all.
Uh-huh.
Now, I had been coughing incessantly for 12 months.
Yeah.
There had not been a day, an hour go by when I hadn't been coughing.
Mm-hmm.
Michael cleared my cough. And to this day, I haven't had that cough back again.
Yeah.
Now, that was, I became friends with Michael, and I asked him about it later. I said, he said, look, I don't do healings anymore, but I was given instructions from a higher power that I was to fix you so that you could see for yourself that this stuff is real.
Yeah. You had no doubt after that, did you?
Well, that was a turning point for me,
Yeah.
Gloria. It was an absolute turning point. It didn't entirely fix my cynicism, but
No.
I came back to Australia, and people who knew me said, "What's happened? You're not coughing. You know,
Mhm.
did you find some medicine? Did you find a doctor over there? What happened?" And I would explain to them, and they go, "Oh yeah, sure, Bill. Yeah, right. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe that."
Yeah.
But I had a first-hand personal experience of it, Gloria,
Yeah.
of this psychic healer fixing me when medicine couldn't,
Yeah.
due to past life interventions. And that was really the turning point for me. I then started to take this stuff far more seriously after that.
Yeah. I mean, I want to come in and say, I will say um, all the time, actually, I'm quite repetitive, but I do say it for a reason. When you research something, and we all on this path research, there's always an intellectual understanding. However, the doubting Thomas will always come in, and that's good. I think healthy skepticism is good. Okay, and it is part of the guidance system to, well, I don't know, is it a plane? Is it Superman? Is it a UFO, so to speak? It's but it's one of those experiences that go from the, okay, I've researched this, I've done this, and I'm doing a documentary, I've researched it, I have an intellectual understanding of the whole context of it. There's a big difference between that and experiential, because when you have an experiential knowing experience, it becomes a truth to you, to the being you are. For example, I give analogies a lot for anyone that gets a bit lost in this type of conversation. If I shared my banana, my cake with you, and you tasted it and it was just foul, and the experience, you'd never eat ginger cake again because it's experiential. If I told you it was a crap cake, you wouldn't have believed me. Well, maybe it is. Do you see what I'm saying? So for you, you have the intellectual understanding and you're doing your documentaries, but then it was experiential. So it's true. It's a truth, not a belief, guys. It's a truth. So I wouldn't say you need to go off and believe. If it's experiential, it becomes a truth. I mean, that's my truth anyway. That's my verbiage. Does that resonate with you at all, Bill?
Well, yeah, my truth is different from other people's truths.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've tried to do in the film, in the intuition film, and now in this Facing Fear film, is not proselytize, not tell people what to think or how to think.
No, exactly.
What I do is I detail my journey,
Yeah.
what happened to me and what happens to me, and the way that I think, and the
Yes.
conclusions that I come to.
Yeah.
But I don't ever try and stuff them down people's throats,
No.
because
Can't.
it's for them to find their own particular truth. And there are people who've seen the intuition film who are very threatened by it, because it shakes up their fundamental beliefs.
Yeah.
I've had a few Q&As where I've been verbally attacked.
Yeah.
Kind of like people say,
Though, however, from the likes of yourself, I do my utmost to become non-judgmental. I run podcasts, so I have different people come on with the different truths and belief systems that really don't resonate with me, but I don't have an opinion on them. I want their experience. It's the same thing, but you do find others, that really can be quite, vocal, because you're threatening their belief systems. They're not open enough. Or could I say, I'm speculating, they're in fear that what they for a lifetime believed in wasn't true. It's a fear that makes them react in such what we could call a negative way. Do you think? I don't know.
Let's examine that fear.
Yeah.
Okay, so you bring up
Good
that
point.
fear.
Yeah.
So let's examine that fear. Where does that fear come from, and what is the basis of that fear? That fear is based, once again, in loss, and that is a loss of a belief system, a loss of stature,
Yeah.
a loss of certainty.
Yes.
See, the fear of the unknown or the fear of change,
Yes.
is a loss of certainty, loss of stasis, if you like.
Yeah.
And so I'm really quite fascinated by this notion that all fear comes down to some form of fear of loss.
Yes. Because it would be, because it's I mean, if you're so invested in your personal identity and someone comes along and has a different perception, you're so invested with it's if you lose it, you may either one, religiously go burn in hellfire for eternity, or two, you'll be ostracized from the community, or three, you may lose your job and you'll be billy no mates and all that. They're all fear related, and
they're all loss related too.
they're
You talk
all
about
they're all for loss. It's
losing
always
the job,
loss.
being ostracized.
Yeah, and it's and within that, included in that, when you deconstruct that, it's then other aspects come in that if you did the work on yourself, you would identify, well, I obviously value other people's opinions of me, and I fear they won't think well of me or love me, so that really takes you down. That's what I do in my groups. That's what really takes you down the rabbit hole. And at first it's very frightening to address these things, and I know, because I've been there, done it, and did it, and I'm still doing it. But it really does open you up. And I'm in total agreement now. I mean, you've already changed my perception, my verbiage. Yeah, fear is loss. I get it. And because I relate it when people, they fear dying. And why do people feel dying? It's, again, they have so much investment in them, their identity of who they think they are, that they think the physical body's going to go, they're going to lose it. So it's a fear of loss, is it not?
It's a fear of loss. It's also a fear of the unknown, because
Yes.
a lot of people don't know what is after death.
Yes.
I have a certain serious set of beliefs that I know what is there after death for me and for the people that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you, Gloria?
Yeah.
What are you afraid of right now?
Hold on. At the moment, I can't find anything, but I'm sure there's something in there. Not at the moment. I'm not at the moment. Anything's jumping out at me? Not at the moment. No. Can't think.
If I stopped talking, would you be afraid?
Oh no. If you stopped talking, it wouldn't bother me. If I've had it on the show where someone just disappeared, internet goes down, and I just chat. No, that's not I don't have a fear of that. No, I've experienced it, and it doesn't bother me. No, not at all. But I'm sure I have fears of something that I haven't identified yet, because it's a continuous journey. I'm not fearless. There are other things will identify themselves, new things. Yeah. But at the moment, no. There are many. It's like at the beginning, when I did, in the beginning of creating my podcast, I wanted to present it in a really, professional way to be seen, way back a couple of years ago. And then I realized that was a fear of other people's perception. For me now, I don't do that. For me now, and at the very beginning, people said, oh, you need to get likes, you need to get shares. And I fell into that trap at first. And then I said, no, if I get one viewer and my guest can assist them in healing or changing their way, then I'm happy with that. So I even dropped that fear. So as I experience new things, then new fears come up and I work with them, but I'm at the point now where I can identify them. Can I ask you, do you have any fears right now?
I had a situation 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving. I was with my wife. We've just celebrated 40 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We were driving back from the Hunter Valley, where we had just shown a cut of the film to a distributor.
Mm-hmm.
We were on a small country road, a highway, I guess it was, but it was 2 lanes. My wife was dozing. A beautiful, beautiful afternoon, sun out. And suddenly a car pulled. There was a line of traffic coming towards us. Speed limit was 100 kilometers an hour. This car pulled out to overtake a truck, but there was no room. The car was coming straight for me. There was absolutely no room. Like there was no chance at all that this person could complete the overtaking of the truck and get back in time without colliding head on with me. It happened so fast, Gloria, and I knew I only had a split second in which to react, and the way I would react would determine whether or not my wife and I would live.
Yeah.
This car by this stage was accelerating. My first thought was, oh, surely the driver has seen me and it's going to slip back into their side of the road. But no, what the driver did was accelerate. So by this stage, the driver was doing maybe 130 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
I was on the speed limit, and I didn't even have time to brake. It happened so fast. What I did is I swerved onto the side of the road where there was gravel and guideposts. The car whizzed past me, missing me by literally inches. I had a guidepost coming up. I quickly swung back onto my side of the road again, and the whole thing was over. And my wife turned to me and she said, her first words were, "Have we just died and gone to heaven?" Now, what was really interesting about the whole thing was this. There are a couple of things interesting about it. We have a color associated with this film in the posters and the artwork and the graphics in the film itself. And that color is sort of a dark lime green. This car was the exact same color as the artwork in the film. Now, it's a very unusual color green. You just don't see cars that color. This car was exactly that color. The second thing was that throughout the whole thing, I remained calm. I didn't go into fear. I did not go into fear. And when I came back onto the road again, having just dodged the guidepost coming up, I didn't go into a post-trauma rush of adrenaline, which is in fact what happened when that truck nearly missed me on the, in New Orleans. When that happened, I had to pull over because I was shaking and the adrenaline was just absolutely coursing through my body. With this, I swung back onto the side of the road. I kept driving, and I was as calm as if nothing had happened. Now, when I look back on this, when my wife and I look back on this, we have to break it down into esoteric and metaphysical terms because it made no sense. Either the person driving the car was on drugs, but there was no sort of erratic nature to the driving. The driving was absolutely quite definite and deliberate. This person pulled out, aimed this green bullet at us and tried to take us out, and didn't. And the driver kept on going and I kept on going. Now, if you look at that car as, because it's the same color as the movie I'm just finishing on, Fear, if you look at that car as being the representation of fear, then fear tried to take us out. And I remained calm throughout, and I remained calm after. And I did not succumb to fear.
No.
And so I'm able to sit here today and talk to you and not be in some funeral parlor somewhere.
And my show would be cancelled with you, so that would be selfish of you. However, for sharing that. I'm going to come in from just my perception, hearing that and the interview. I so resonate with your conclusion. However, as internet, I keep zooming out. So your first intuition is the survival, which keeps you alive, and you were not listening to the voice. Slow down. So your higher self, that's the first intuition, come back at you, and you listened, and you didn't die the first time, but then that catapulted you onto a journey of understanding intuition and the four that you identified as different areas of intuition that we have. So maybe, I don't know, then you go in a couple of days ago, you're replaying, and I think it is connected synchronicity, the color of the car, and it looked like it was saying, what are you going to do this time? Have you got the message? Like your higher self saying, have you got it? Are you going to act? I don't know. But this time, because you had done the research on it, you'd experienced it and realized what fear was. This time, you just went as the higher self. You saw it coming, and you're just being the being you are. Because of all the higher self, let's call it that, there are no fears. There's no nothing. Okay, there's nothing to fear. And then I love the fact, so you went through it, that experience. There was no fear. And because you were in that, I call it the 0 point, because you're in the 0 point, afterwards you went, right, let's get on. Come on, let's go. Not like post-traumatic stress disorder. But for me, sharing that, and thank you, the most beautiful part is what your wife said. This so resonates with me. Have we died and gone to heaven? That I've said many times, I thought I've died. And most recently, it really feels like I keep dying. And it feels joyous. So I resonate with that. But that, to me, from my perception, which no one has to resonate with or believe, that you were both in that space at the 0 point or the higher self, and you passed your test. It's just like, oh, if it is a test, I don't know, an experience. I mean, it's beautiful. That was a beautiful experience. I mean, well done you. I don't know if I'd behave in the same way. And there's me saying I'm self-realized. I don't know, because I haven't experienced that. I have been in major accidents, and I've never had the fear. I've had the trauma afterwards, yes, but not when I'm in it. For some reason, there's no fear when you're going through. It's like, I don't know, would you say that the higher self takes over on very traumatic things? Takes the steering wheel, so to speak, would you say?
After it happened, my wife found a quiet moment, and she connected through to her higher self, and she asked what happened. And what she got back was that it was a recalibration for both of us to step up to a new paradigm. Then to a new paradigm and a new normal. And then last night I woke up in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had by my bedside a copy of Paul Selig's book, his seventh book, called Beyond the Known, the Book of Realization. And I arbitrarily opened up the book, and I came across this passage about fear. As you do. And basically what I got from this, because I'm drawn to pieces in books that come to me when they need to come.
Synchronicity.
And this was a section where he talked about seeing something in a higher way. And in seeing it in a higher way, it's an expansion of consciousness.
Yes.
And so okay, so you can have something like that happen, and you can go, "Wow, we just dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
Wasn't aren't we lucky? Wasn't that great driving?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what an idiot. The guy must be on drugs, or the woman must be on drugs, or
Mm-hmm.
you know." My brother, I told the story to my brother. My brother said, "Didn't you feel angry?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you just want to quickly do a U-turn and chase the guy down and get his number plate and report him to the police?"
No.
No, I said, "No." I just kept on driving.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
number one, there's no way that I could have caught the guy because he was driving so fast. Number two, I had, what do I do? I get his number plate. I report him to the police, and the police ask for evidence. And there's no crash. There's nothing.
No.
There'd be no
But,
there'd be no witnesses. A total waste of time. You
yeah.
know, but his response was, get angry, do
Yeah.
something about it, chase
Yeah.
him down, get revenge.
Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of accountability for what happened. But there was none of that. And
No.
so what my wife and I did is we did exactly what Paul said.
Yeah.
We saw it in a higher way.
From
We
the
saw
upper room. From the upper
it from
room.
the upper rim, as he talks about it,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
and in
resonated
seeing
that.
and in seeing it from the upper room and seeing it from a higher perspective,
Yeah.
we expanded our
Consciousness.
consciousness. And even me talking to you about it in this manner
Yeah.
on this podcast, which will be
Yeah.
seen by people,
Yeah.
the job is done. Spirit has
Yes.
done the job. So
It's done it.
I posted some stuff on Facebook,
Mm.
and I got some comments saying, "Oh, what a horrible person that was who was driving, and what a an awful malignant act it was." And I think, no, it wasn't. It wasn't an act of darkness. It was actually an act of light.
It was. It was. It
It was.
and
It was an act.
that
It was,
perception I do resonate with you. Do go on. I'm loving it. I'm loving this conversation.
well, it was an act of light. And so, if you see it in those terms, if
Mm.
you don't see it in terms of anger and retribution and accountability and those sort of things, but you see it as an opportunity to take that experience and look at it in metaphysical terms, and look at it as an opportunity
Yeah.
to grow and to expand thought, expand consciousness, shift further into light,
Hmm.
then you have to thank that driver.
Oh, you do. Anyone that has brought me anything, um, I thank them in my if I can't connect with them, I thank them, and that's what I teach. You need to thank
Mm.
if that person's giving you someone says something, like, oh, I fucking hate you, you're ugly, whatever, and you feel something coming up, you need to thank that person because you need to see what's coming up. They're there to do that. And then, and this just relates to, you reminded me of something over the years, normally in the past where, someone would do something and like, I'm a driver, you go mad, road rage and all that. And or interaction with another person, you react, yeah. And then I remember when that started to dissipate way back, and then something would happen, like really some, obnoxious person would do something or whatever. And I'm just in point zero. I'm observing and aware of it and aware of the consequence, but it doesn't really touch me. And then I remember at the very beginning when this kept happening, I'm going, I didn't respond. When did that happen? When did that shift happen? I was trying to capture when did I have that light bulb, and then it happened. I thought, well, I'm not in my head. I'm not responding. Am I dead? That's what I used to say. That's why I found it beautiful. Your wife said that in the beginning. I kept going, have I died? Am I a spirit? And they can't see me because I was not reacting. So this topic of conversation, I never knew we were going here. Thank you. It's just wonderful for me. I think it's beautiful. It's thank you for sharing that one. I mean, Paul Selig is awesome. Once I managed to stay up late in the UK. He gave a freebie to join in a session. Every so often he did that. And I got it. And I stayed up and I had to stay awake in the UK up to 2 o'clock in the morning. And he did a live. And I'm telling you, that was another multiple light bulb. Just being in his energy, just being in his room, in his energy was a light bulb. So I know about the Upper Room and Paul Selig, and he doesn't always resonate with some people, but I think you know, he's just a wonderful human being. I like him because he's humble, he's honest with you, straight up. He's just straight up. You know, he just says, "Turn up." All you got to do is turn up, and he turns up and gets on with it and carries on. So, yeah, what a beautiful experience for you. You know. And did you realize at any point where you'd stop reacting to such trauma, perceived trauma? No, because I never knew where it started. Why don't I respond anymore? I'm really sure if someone come towards me, you know, with an axe to kill me, I would respond. But more likely from the 0 point, you know, more likely it wouldn't be a trauma. You still react. You still physically respond, but not in the way you used to. Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's beautiful, Bill. That is absolutely. You're going to do another book or another show or something like that. You've got to. You've got to go deep into that one. I mean, it's beautiful. What does it say about who we are as individual beings? And if everyone was just like you and your wife, how would the world be then? It's a thought, is it not?
It's a good thought.
It's a good thought.
Well, I actually don't know about that. My wife is a bit of a, you know, she's really scary. She scares me. You know, she's terrifying.
Because of her abilities, or just because she's scary?
Oh, she's scary.
She's scary.
Oh yeah, she's smarter than me. She's wiser than me. She's prettier than me. She's everything better than me.
I mean, it's a good match. I've never met your wife, but I already love her, because when she turned, and I resonated when she turned around and said, "Have we died and gone to heaven?" I resonate with that. So, you know, it's just her identity playing a game with you. She's just playing with you. She's not scary. She's not scary at all. But you know, Bill, it's a great way to conclude the show. It's been the most fascinating conversation I've had in a while, and I do a lot of shows. And there's now many areas I want to go down into. It's already going, you know, creating. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey, part of your journey and your experiences. And to anyone who's watched it live, or because in the UK it's like early in the morning, in America it's like the middle of the night, or watch it on the replay, you know, I hope you take from the show that what resonates with you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, just put it to one side. That's all you have to do. Thank you, Donna. Thank you. She had an amazing morning. I thought you might be watching today. And Bill, before we go, just I put your links out there, but tell everybody where they can get hold of you if they wish to research more, or go look at your documentaries, or purchase your books.
Thanks, Gloria, and thanks very much for this chat today. It's been fun.
Yes.
So my website is billbennett.com.au for Australia. Bill Bennett, BENNET.com.au. My books can be bought on Amazon. Look, I wrote a book about the Camino called The Way, My Way. That's on Amazon. PTS is available on Apple iTunes and Google Play.
I do have all the links for you on the advert. They're all in there as well. And if you haven't, you know, better write it down. Just go to the advert on my page, and you'll find it there. You know, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I hope, you know, not long you'll come back, and I'll get you onto Open Minds. Have you onto Open Minds, and we can have I think we're just going to go to a certain area. We're going to discuss a certain area. Bring the wife on if she needs to come on, because I want to see the scary wife. But You know, I love
she, like I say, we've just met. We just celebrated 40 years of marriage, and she's quite amazing.
Well, there you go. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And to everyone else, tomorrow night, Sunday night, 7 p.m. UK time, part 2 of the one and only wonderful, beautiful, soul healing Dr. Dr. Louise. We had a blast last time. We just giggled. We resonate with everything. We had such a great organic conversation. She's back. Dr. Rita Louise, tomorrow night, 7 p.m.
Well, do say hello to her for me, won't you?
I will do, Bill. I will do. I just love this woman. You know, love her. We just connected, like, you know, and you know, she suggested you. She was the one that said how wonderful and you know you were and authentic and everything, and we just connected. We just chat, and we went down so many, let's say, rabbit holes, and it was fun to share experiences and put our speculative ideas together. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul. She is a lovely, lovely soul. Yeah, I will. I'll give her your regards tomorrow night. Okay. And to everyone watching the show, either live or on the replay, I'm Gloria. This is Inception Live Podcast. Thank you for watching. Till next time, guys. Bye.